Often we find in Scripture names that go unnoticed, almost silent figures who sustain the faith of others without seeking any recognition. Onesiphorus is one of these figures. While many around Paul drifted away in his darkest moments, he stood firm, going through dangers and hardships to bring encouragement and support. And so, alongside Paul, Onesiphorus offered not only his presence, but something even deeper, genuine loyalty in times of trial. But why does a story like Onesiphorus's impact us so much? Because it touches on something that is sorely lacking in our world today, a kind of friendship that doesn't shy away when difficulties arise. The story of this faithful friend is a call to see beyond the ordinary, inviting us to offer the same kind of support and presence that he showed. In this video, you'll discover what it means to be a true friend in times of crisis, how to act with genuine loyalty, and how these small but powerful acts of encouragement and faith can transform lives around us. When we think of faith, we often imagine something personal, intimate, which each one cultivates in the silence of his soul. But the truth is that faith is also strengthened through the mutual support, encouragement, and loyalty we show to one another. It is no wonder that from the beginning, Christians met in small communities in which they supported each other in times of difficulty. Onesiphorus, for example, is one of those characters who, loyally and steadfastly, supported Paul when he needed it most. During Paul's imprisonment, when many had drifted away, it was Onesiphorus who appeared to refresh their faith and demonstrate that even in the shadows, there is light in those who choose to stand by those who suffer. This concept of support is a true cornerstone on the path of the Christian faith. If we turn our eyes to stories like Rhoda's, we see that courage and support, even in risky situations, can transform the lives of those around us. Rhoda, recognizing Pedro at the door, did not hesitate to act, even though she knew the dangers. There, support was more than a friendly word. It was a commitment of encouragement in a time of trouble. Similarly, being Onesiphorus in one's life can mean appearing in the darkest hours when one feels trapped, either literally or figuratively, and needs a touch of faith to persevere. Imagine a community where each person feels responsible for the spiritual well-being of the other. It would not be just a group, but a family of faith. This is what the Bible teaches us through examples like those of Onesiphorus and Rhoda, that supporting others is an act of faith in itself. A Christian who chooses to turn his back in times of difficulty misses a valuable opportunity to put his faith into practice. How would it be different if, instead of moving away, we were always ready to refresh the spirit of those in need? In doing so, we are not only helping but cultivating in ourselves a loyalty that transforms faith into something tangible and deeply human. Facing life's challenges without support is like crossing a desert without water. All of us at some point face symbolic prisons, situations that imprison us, rob us of our peace, and sap our strength. At such times, remembering examples like Onesiphorus's can encourage us to act in the same spirit. If we know someone who is stuck in difficulties, whether at work, in family conflicts, or even in health, we can be the relief, the refreshment that they need so much. A simple "I'm with you" or a hug can bring out a perseverance that the person didn't even know they had. This mutual support, in its purest form, goes beyond the desire to help. He is a manifestation of faith. Many Christians face internal battles they never share, believing that they must be strong alone. But what Onesiphorus's example teaches us is that true strength lies in knowing that we are not alone. Faith multiplies when it is shared. A visit, a phone call, a simple coffee with a friend in trouble can refresh your spirit, something that, as Christians, we can all do. Unity in difficult times, such as in times of peace, is one of the greatest gifts we can offer. In our society, where more and more people feel isolated, the act of encouraging someone is almost revolutionary. Onesiphorus showed that the mere fact of being present can make a tremendous difference. Paul, imprisoned and lonely, found in Onesiphorus a true friend who, without hesitation, crossed barriers to offer support. Perhaps our modern lives will turn us away from this practice, but the truth is that a gesture of encouragement can illuminate someone's faith in unexpected ways. Imagine how much good you can do by being Onesiphorus to a friend, family member, or colleague who is struggling to maintain hope. Make no mistake, support doesn't need grand gestures to be true. Often the simple act of listening is what matters most. In the midst of life's prisons, a good conversation can bring back the lightness and strengthen the perseverance we so desperately need. This kind of encouragement, when authentic, turns even the most difficult moments into opportunities to renew faith. Just as Rhoda showed courage in recognizing Peter, let us also recognize the needs of others by offering presence and loyalty. This support, while simple, is vital in the Christian walk. And why are so many hesitant to support others? Perhaps it is the fear of getting involved in other people's problems or the belief that they have nothing to offer. But the story of Onesiphorus reminds us that to be support, it is enough to have an open heart. When he visited Paul in prison, he did not seek glory or recognition. He sought to be the presence of God in his friend's life. This is the invitation for all of us, to be someone who, like him, brings comfort and hope. Each one can be a point of support in the other's life, regardless of the weight that this other is carrying. This mutual support is a constant calling in the Christian life, and he does not need specific dates or occasions. It is a daily attitude. Imagine the impact of a life lived to refresh the faith of those around you. As you dedicate yourself to this purpose, you discover a kind of joy and fulfillment that only comes from serving others. Onesiphorus was a clear example of loyalty, courage, and faith. He showed that supporting someone in difficulty is a choice we can all make. It is not about solving all problems, but about being by the side, holding the hand and walking together. And the beauty of it is that by supporting others, you also strengthen your own faith. This is the secret that Onesiphorus's example leaves us. By being loyal and refreshing the spirit of others, we are equally renewed. Faith becomes more real, stronger, because it is sustained by bonds of love and commitment. In the moments when the journey seems more difficult, knowing that we are not alone brings a comfort that cannot be measured. Thus, the cycle of support continues, nurturing the faith, loyalty, and perseverance of all who decide, like Onesiphorus, to be a relief and a faithful presence in the lives of others. Throughout the Bible, we encounter characters who, without prominence or recognition, play pivotal roles in the faith and spiritual strengthening of others. These black horses represent the ordinary people who, through silent and dedicated actions, profoundly impact the lives of those around them. They are those who live the faith authentically, without fanfare, and precisely for this reason, they leave a significant legacy. These figures are an invitation to see that the power to transform the world around us is not in great deeds, but in small gestures, in constant dedication. Like Rhoda and Onesiphorus, God often works discreetly, using these people as instruments of encouragement and support. It's interesting to think about how these black horses are people who exceed expectations in an unexpected way, driven by genuine loyalty and faith. They are not heroes in the spotlight, but their lives, based on service and support, profoundly impact those close to them. In the midst of difficulties and challenges, mutual support, when exercised silently, is a powerful testimony. Thus, these ordinary invisible Christians become great by serving, living in perseverance, with a commitment to refresh the souls of those facing difficulties. And here is the true power of influence, which rests not on the need for recognition, but rather on a constant willingness to encourage and strengthen. Who has never felt discouraged and found encouragement in the simple words or actions of someone they did not even expect? Sometimes a friend or even a colleague does something small, but that touches us deeply. These black horses of faith have this unique ability to do good in silence. They teach us that it doesn't take a prominent position to make a difference. In everyday life, gestures such as offering help without the other asking, listening attentively, or even being present in difficult times are acts that translate the meaning of the true Christian faith. How can we be a black horse in someone's life? Maybe through a coffee offered at the right time, a friendly shoulder, or a simple "count on me" that brings unexpected comfort. The beauty of the black horse concept is that it reminds us that everyone has something to offer, no matter how simple. In the Christian journey, this support is revealed as a gift to those who receive it, but also to those who offer it. Often the act of refreshing another person's spirit brings a renewal of its own. Faith is multiplied, for by encouraging and supporting others, we end up fortified in our own spiritual journey. Loyalty and silent service are gestures that, away from the spotlight, shine even more brightly. Each of us can be that discreet and faithful presence in someone's life, offering encouragement and support in a simple yet deeply meaningful way. And how do we know if we are impacting someone's life? Often the answer doesn't come immediately, and like the black horses of the Bible, we may never know the full impact of our actions. But every gesture of support and every word of encouragement plants a seed that grows, even if we don't see it. Onesiphorus, for example, did not seek recognition, but Paul never forgot the support he offered him. History is living testimony that small actions have power. In modern life, where many feel undervalued, a simple gesture can be the difference between hope and discouragement. And by being that discreet presence, we are reminded that for God, every action counts. These Bible characters representing the black horses show that silent service is a true act of faith. They do not seek recognition, as their strength comes from loyalty and commitment to others, and this in itself is a powerful example. They are ordinary people who, by living with perseverance, encourage others to do the same. In a world where value is often measured by appearance and visibility, these characters are proof that what really matters are the fruits that each one leaves. Its mission is not to be exalted, but to refresh the spirit of those who go through difficulties, being a safe haven in times of storm. Being a black horse also means embracing a way of life that puts others as a priority, even when it requires sacrifices. When someone decides to support another person, that choice is a direct reflection of their faith, their loyalty to God, and to those He places by our side. We may be called upon to give up some wants or interests in order to offer genuine and sincere support. This kind of commitment is rare and precious. In times of loneliness or trial, it is the presence of a loyal friend that makes the most difference. Thus, we can all learn from the example of these characters to get closer to others, cultivating bonds that reflect the true essence of faith. We don't need to be perfect or have all the answers to support someone. Sometimes it is enough to be there, as Onesiphorus was to Paul, encouraging even if silently. Loyalty in times of crisis is a precious gift, for it is the very essence of faith in action. Those who assume this role of black horse remind us that it is in service that the greatest sign of Christian love is revealed. Small attitudes of support have the power to transform lives, creating a chain of faith and perseverance that crosses generations. By drawing inspiration from his example, we become closer to God and what He expects of us on our journey. God, in His wisdom, uses these black horses to reveal the transformative impact of a life dedicated to others. They teach us that the greatest legacy of faith we can leave is in loving and encouraging in a practical way. In our daily lives, we have the opportunity to follow the example of these figures, acting with loyalty and care. After all, the true power of Christianity lies in the simplicity of loving as Christ loved. By becoming these servants and supporters, we are allowing God to work quietly and powerfully in our midst, impacting all who have the opportunity to receive our support. This is an act of faith that echoes, without words, for a lifetime. After all, we can all be these black horses in someone's life. All it takes is a willing heart, a mind focused on faith, and the courage to act without expecting anything in return. When we offer support and encouragement, especially in times of difficulty, we make room for God to manifest His love in tangible and powerful ways. And in doing so, we connect with the deepest essence of Christianity. The story of these characters shows us that in faith, the simple often becomes great, and that the path to true impact is that of humility and silent service, where each act of support becomes a seed of perseverance and hope. Faithfulness is one of the deepest virtues one can practice, especially in times of adversity. Onesiphorus is a clear example of this unwavering loyalty. While others distanced themselves from Paul during his imprisonment, Onesiphorus not only remained faithful, but went above and beyond in diligently seeking him, facing risks and difficulties. He knew that his presence and support could refresh Paul's soul in a time of pain and loneliness. How many times today do we see someone discouraged and hesitate to approach? Onesiphorus teaches us that even when everyone retreats, true loyalty calls us to be a presence and comfort in the lives of those who face difficulties. At that time, visiting prisoners was dangerous and, for many, a shameful choice. Yet Onesiphorus was not ashamed of Paul's chains. He saw beyond the physical situation and recognized the spiritual need for a friend. This makes us reflect. How often do we judge others by their prisons, their failures, mistakes, or difficult circumstances? Onesiphorus shows us that loyalty is greater than any judgment. He chose to be there, reinforcing Paul's faith with his presence. Through this gesture, he gave a living example that true friendship in faith does not seek to protect oneself, but rather to protect and strengthen the other, even when this involves personal risks. Onesiphorus's act resembles a true balm, a kind of freshness for the spirit. Paul, there chained and isolated, had in Onesiphorus an ally who gave him the strength to persevere. Imagine the strength this brought to Paul, knowing that despite the abandonment of many, there was still someone who believed in him. This kind of support and encouragement has an impact that goes beyond the moment, as it demonstrates faithful and lasting love. In this day and age, many people live in a kind of emotional or spiritual prison, and a simple act, such as a visit or a word of encouragement, can refresh and revitalize these suffering souls. Onesiphorus did not seek rewards or recognition. He acted out of genuine loyalty. How many times in our own circles do we meet those who approach only for interests? Onesiphorus represents the opposite of this. He was there for Paul, for his friend in need, and not for any personal benefit. It reminds us that true loyalty is selfless, focused on the other and how we can offer genuine support. This is a powerful example, as it invites us to question our intentions and to practice a friendship that is based on unconditional support, where faith is expressed not in words, but in true and consistent actions. In the passage from 2 Timothy 1:16, Paul says gratefully, "He has often refreshed me." This resuscitation goes far beyond a simple visit. He shows us the restorative effect of a faithful friendship, of someone who unhesitatingly becomes a comforting presence in difficult times. Life is full of trials, and in those moments, knowing that we have a loyal person by our side brings unparalleled comfort. Onesiphorus teaches us that shared faith is a firm anchor in the midst of storms, and that a faithful friend is a priceless gift we can give. Being that presence for someone is one of the greatest services we can render to others and to God. This support does not only mean being physically present, it goes above and beyond by representing an emotional and spiritual presence. Often a simple word of encouragement can lift the spirits of someone who is stuck in their own difficulties. As Onesiphorus, we can revive those around us through simple and sincere gestures. This shows us that we do not need great acts to strengthen someone's faith. Small actions are capable of bringing a new freshness, a renewed spirit. This mutual support, when practiced with sincerity, is the basis of a living and shared faith, a faith that transcends any barrier. By visiting Paul, Onesiphorus went against social expectations and showed that true friendship is not shaken by adverse circumstances. This act of encouragement is a reflection of Christ himself, who drew near to the marginalized and oppressed. Often, it is in moments of shame or failure that people need support the most, but it is also in these moments that they most face withdrawal from others. Onesiphorus's story challenges this trend and teaches us that loyalty is more than companionship. It is an act of courage that sustains faith and gives support where few would be willing to be. Onesiphorus's loyalty challenges us to adopt a similar stance, a disposition that is not intimidated by the prisons of others. By choosing to visit Paul, he not only supported his friend, but also testified to his faith before God and men. How many times do we hesitate to approach someone in difficulty for fear of getting too involved? Onesiphorus reminds us that true support requires a willingness to face one's reservations. It's not an easy commitment, but it's exactly this kind of loyalty that builds strong relationships and strengthens faith in times of discouragement. Onesiphorus's perseverance in seeking out Paul shows us that loyalty is something that is cultivated and that becomes evident when difficulties arise. He went to Paul even though he knew the risks, demonstrating that Christian love is a love willing to face discomfort and persecution. When we think about how we can apply this in our lives, we can consider the small gestures of faithfulness we can have with those around us. As Christians, we are called to stand with others in times of trial, not just in times of celebration and joy. Onesiphorus shows us that by doing so, we strengthen our own faith and contribute to the endurance of all. And so Onesiphorus's example invites us to be more than simple spectators of the lives of others. He calls us to be protagonists of a faith that supports, refreshes, and remains faithful. By following this path, we become more like the Christ, who even in his divine mission drew near to the needy and offered comfort. Onesiphorus reminds us that in faith, loyalty is an ongoing choice, a daily decision to reach out, to encourage, and to persevere alongside those in need. In each act of support we offer, we participate in a larger mission and contribute to strengthening the faith and hope of all those around us. Paul's arrests and trials reveal a side of his mission that goes beyond words and letters. During his journey, Paul faced 2 arrests in Rome, each with its own intensity and symbolism. In the first, he still had some freedom, being able to preach and receive visitors, which allowed him to continue his ministry. However, after the fire of Rome in 64 AD, the situation changed dramatically. Paul was placed in a cold and isolated dungeon, which symbolized not only physical isolation, but also the extreme challenge of faith. This second arrest represented a unique ordeal, where the firmness of his faith would be tested to the limit, far from comfort and familiar faces. Imagine Paul in his cell, shrouded in the darkness and dampness of that dungeon, and think about what it would be like to keep faith in such a place. His trust in Christ was the only light in the midst of so much suffering. He knew that even amid chains and stone walls, his mission to share Christ's message could not be interrupted. These prisons reflect not only the physical, but the emotional and spiritual prisons that many face. All of us, at some point, can find ourselves in situations that limit our movements, that challenge us to persevere in faith even when everything around us seems bleak. Paul, with his perseverance, shows us that it is possible to find purpose and courage, even in the darkest days. Paul faced the loneliness and abandonment of many who had previously followed him, but it was precisely in these moments that he also encountered God's presence in a unique way. This experience is something that many Christians share when they go through difficult times. Sometimes it is in solitude that we hear God's voice most clearly, for there are no distractions, only the deep silence that connects us with the divine. For those who are facing their own emotional prisons, it is a reminder that God never abandons, even when everyone else seems to have walked away. Paul used these moments to write, pray, and strengthen his faith, showing that even the darkest place can turn into an altar of communion. Paul's first imprisonment is an example of how faith offers us opportunities, even in the midst of adversity. He was confined, but his message was not. This period of apparent limitation was one of the most productive for Paul, as it was when he wrote some of his most influential letters, such as Philippians and Colossians. Paul turned his restrictions into a channel for the expression of faith. Like him, we all have opportunities, even when limited by circumstances. What can we do with the limitations we face? Perhaps it is an invitation to write, to reflect, or to reconnect with those we love, finding in the midst of difficulties the strength to continue. The second imprisonment, more rigorous and painful, brings another lesson. Faith is not a guarantee of ease, but of presence. In his dark cell, Paul was physically alone, but spiritually he had never been so accompanied. In situations of suffering, this is a truth that can renew our hope. The fact that he persevered and maintained his mission to share the word of Christ, even in those conditions, is inspiring. When the physical fails and all seems lost, faith sustains us like an invisible but palpable force. Like Paul, we can find in faith the strength needed to maintain hope, even when it seems that all doors have closed. Paul's imprisonment reminds us that true faith is manifested not only in victories, but also in apparent defeats. It is easy to proclaim faith in times of prosperity, but maintaining it in times of trial is what really reveals its power. In that dark dungeon, he showed that faith is a flame that withstands the storms. Paul knew that his imprisonment was part of a greater purpose, something that perhaps he would never fully see realized. This is a valuable teaching, that our suffering can also serve a greater purpose, even if we don't fully understand it at the time. That's what gives us the courage to move forward. And who would have thought that from a prison would come words of encouragement that would span centuries? Paul's letters, written in the midst of his own trials, still refresh the faith of Christians around the world today. He, confined and facing uncertainty, was able to offer words of comfort and direction to those who would be facing challenges. This example teaches us that even in our worst moments, we can be a source of hope for others. Like Paul, we can use our own challenges to offer wisdom and encouragement, being a support to those facing similar challenges. Paul's perseverance in prisons is a powerful testimony that true faith is resilient and unbreakable. He knew that his body was chained, but his spirit remained free. This is the kind of faith we should all aspire to, a faith that endures, that grows, regardless of external circumstances. In this day and age, facing hardship and keeping the faith is a constant challenge, but Paul's story teaches us that faith is the foundation that holds us together. By being inspired by his journey, we find the encouragement to move forward, safe in the knowledge that we are not alone. In addition, Paul's arrests teach us about the value of mutual support. Even in the loneliest moments, he relied on those who were not ashamed of their chains, such as Onesiphorus. This shows that when we face difficulties, having faithful friends by our side makes all the difference. They are like God's presence in our lives, a constant reminder that we are loved and supported. We can be that kind of support to others, offering our presence and encouragement, just as Onesiphorus did. The faithfulness we find in times of difficulty strengthens our faith and makes us better able to face whatever comes. Finally, Paul's story in his prisons is a reminder that the journey of faith often takes unexpected turns. He lived with the certainty that, despite the chains, his spirit was free because he was united to Christ. And it is this same certainty that strengthens us today, showing that faith is the anchor that keeps us safe, no matter what we face. May we learn from his example and allow our faith to be strengthened not only in times of peace, but also in storms. As we reflect on their trials, we find a renewed inspiration for our own walk, knowing that even in the prisons of life, God stands by us. The application of Onesiphorus' loyalty today is a call to see the needs around us with a watchful and compassionate eye. Living that loyalty means going beyond offering quick fixes. It's about offering a true presence and genuine listening. Onesiphorus, in looking for Paul in his prison, did not bring ready answers, but brought the warmth of a faithful friendship. In the modern world, where often the speed of responses seems more important than presence, Onesiphorus' attitude challenges us to slow down, to be present, and to refresh the soul of those around us. Being Onesiphor in one's life means being someone who not only offers help, but also understands the depth of another's pains and joys. Often, those around us face emotional or spiritual prisons that are not visible to the naked eye. We can be physically close, but far from what really matters. Onesiphorus' example teaches us to recognize the other as a unique being with needs and difficulties that we may never fully understand. This support is not an attempt to solve the other's problems, but rather a practice of empathy, which manifests itself in a simple, "I'm here." This reminds us that true loyalty sees the other beyond the problems and pains, recognizing the person as a whole, valuing him even in the midst of his struggles. Nowadays, it is easy to get sucked into haste and productivity, to the point of neglecting those who are by our side. Onesiphorus offers us a new perspective, a call to interrupt our routine and pay attention to the emotional needs of those around us. In times of hardship, often, what people need most is someone who really cares, someone who refreshes their faith and hope. This genuine, selfless support creates bonds that go beyond circumstances and become true testimonies of Christian love. As we practice this loyalty, we become a living reflection of God's love, which sees and values each of us. Imagine that someone close to you is going through a difficult time. Instead of rushing to give advice, why not simply be present? Instead of quick words, offer a calm and confident presence. Onesiphorus did not go to Paul to tell him what he should do or to solve his problems. He was to be by his side. Today we can apply that loyalty by showing empathy and creating a space where people can feel welcomed and heard. This act of loyalty is an invitation to transform our relationships into true alliances of faith and mutual support, where everyone feels valued and respected. To be a refreshment to others, as Onesiphorus was to Paul, is also an act of humility. He did not seek recognition. His only objective was to bring comfort to his friend who was going through difficulties. This kind of support goes against our society's tendency to value only great deeds and visible achievements. Loyalty is often the silent act of staying, of listening, of offering presence without wanting anything in return. This example teaches us that when we put others first and set aside our own interests, we are strengthening our own faith and drawing closer to God. Onesiphorus's attitude also shows us that being a faithful support to others is not something that is done only once, but something that is cultivated over time. Constancy is a pillar of loyalty, and it is precisely this repetition that strengthens the bonds of faith between people. Many start helping with good intentions, but end up giving up when challenges arise or when the other does not respond as expected. Onesiphorus, however, teaches us that true loyalty is persevering, it is continuous. Even when there are no thanks or rewards, true loyalty remains steadfast, for it is not based on expectations, but on love. Moreover, applying Onesiphorus's loyalty today means having an intentional look at those who are on the margins, at those who face hardship without the support they deserve. Often the people who need encouragement the most are the ones who receive it the least. We can become agents of change by offering support and encouragement to those who feel invisible, abandoned, or unappreciated. This kind of loyalty is a mission for those who want to live out their faith in a practical and meaningful way. By practicing this loyalty, we turn our own lives into a source of comfort and hope for those who need it most. The presence of Onesiphorus in Paul's life challenges us to be more sensitive to opportunities to support those around us. This support can be anything from a friendly conversation to a silent prayer for someone who is facing their battles. The loyalty we offer to others becomes a reflection of our faith, a tangible sign of our connection to God and neighbor. With every act of support and encouragement, we witness to Christ's love in a way that words alone could never express. Being Onesiphorus in one's life is ultimately an invitation to be the support we would like to have in times of need. This practice of loyalty is a daily choice that brings with it a deep growth in the lives of those who exercise it. By offering support and refreshing the spirits of others, we also experience the renewal of our own faith. This cycle of loyalty and encouragement is one of the greatest blessings of the Christian life, because in giving, we also receive. As Onesiphorus, we can all be agents of change, present and active in the lives of those we love. This shared loyalty enriches us and connects us more intimately to God's purpose, strengthening not only each other, but also ourselves. In times of individualism, Onesiphorus's story is a reminder that our faith gains meaning when put into practice through acts of loyalty and empathy. We can make a difference in the lives of others by actively living loyalty, just as he did. And so our faith becomes a chain of support that refreshes and encourages both us and those around us. When we look at the example of Onesiphorus, we are reminded that in a world full of challenges, there is always an opportunity to be a presence, to offer support, and to renew the faith of those who walk beside us. Often, we find in Scripture names that go unnoticed. almost silent figures who sustain the faith of others without seeking any recognition. Onesiphorus is one of these figures. While many around Paul drifted away in his darkest moments, he stood firm, going through dangers and hardships to bring encouragement and support. And so, alongside Paul, Onesiphorus offered not only his presence, but something even deeper, genuine loyalty in times of trial. But why does a story like Onesiphorus's impact us so much? Because it touches on something that is sorely lacking in our world today. A kind of friendship that doesn't shy away when difficulties arise. The story of this faithful friend is a call to see beyond the ordinary, inviting us to offer the same kind of support and presence that he showed. In this video, you'll discover what it means to be a true friend in times of crisis, how to act with genuine loyalty, and how these small but powerful acts of encouragement and faith can transform lives around us. Get ready to immerse yourself in a story where loyalty is the bond that binds, strengthens, and renews. Because being like Onesiphorus isn't just a lesson in friendship, it's an invitation to become an unwavering support in the lives of others, even when everything seems to be falling apart. Let's understand together why the loyalty of this faithful friend continues to echo in history, inspiring all of us to be an anchor of hope and faith in the lives of those who need it most.